Okay, yes, thank you for having me here. And this will be the last physical event for a while, so I'm enjoying it. Okay, so I'll try to present what I would call design considerations as you go about designing decentralized ecosystems. And heading the blockchain factory at Daimler Mobility, obviously the focus will be on the automotive industry, but more or less everything that will be presented here is pretty much applicable to any type of industry where you have digital consumption of a service and you're giving access to a certain good, be it a car or be it a charging station or be it a hotel room, and you're trying to basically operate in a decentralized marketplace. And why is decentralized very important? Because as you move towards software, and software is eating the world, and the consumption of a lot of goods, even though they're physically delivered, like mobility through a vehicle, are by now the service life cycle tends to be digital, which means the service life cycle is software. And we have seen that software scales very, very, very well, and that results through network effects in what we call the platform economy. So as one market after the other is conquered by software, what you see is that platform economics start establishing themselves, and which usually ends up in very high convenience, very good cost effectiveness, and very widespread service offerings. But it also ends up in platform players being very, very centralized and being very powerful. So traditional B2C platforms, any type of platform economy, will match supply with demand. It will act as an intermediary and enable the whole business cycle. And what happens here, and my favorite example is Uber, what happens here, this begins in a friendly manner. You got a neutral player, perceived as neutral, entering an industry, in this case it was ride-hailing, presenting a convenient service, and additional business, everybody's happy. But if you now look at the market economics of this, the driver is paying roughly 20% of revenue to the platform. Obviously, this would not be sustainable for any German industry. It's simply not sustainable. So how can we eat our cake and have it? Meaning to say, how can we achieve digitization, which we need, service delivery over software, which we need? How can we achieve that? How can we achieve the platform economics and the network effects that come with that, but avoid this rent-extracting monopoly scenario? And one clear possible answer is decentralized platforms. So you take the platform part of the platform economics, but you approach it now in a decentralized way. And once you're willing to go that step in your mind process, then the mapping or the matching of decentralized technologies, as in decentralized identities, distributed ledger, aka blockchain, becomes fairly straightforward. So these technologies lend themselves uniquely well to build platforms that are decentralized, yet deliver all of the potential benefit to the customer that the platform games that we have seen from Amazon, Airbnb, Uber, whatever they may be called, which are extremely high customer satisfaction, very high market penetration, very, very high scalability, very high efficiency. So you can marry kind of those two concepts. And this is basically probably and possibly also coming to the automotive sector, especially if you look at the automotive sector from an e-mobility perspective. So first of all, there's a new technology in the vehicles themselves, but also if you look at the number of charging points with combustion engine cars, so that's the gas station, versus the charging points if you look to the new economy. The you have a factor of between 100 and 1,000. It's still not clear what exactly the factor will be, but there needs to be a vastly larger number of charging stations as opposed to gas stations as you move towards an electromobility ecosystem, which means on the infrastructure side, you will already be faced with very high decentralization in terms of the infrastructure needed to fuel or to charge your cars. So approaching that now constructively. So let's assume there is a decentralized ecosystem developing, a lot of players, a lot of devices. You want to fully automate that. We do believe that platform economics scale well and provide service quite well. What do you need in such a platform? What does such a decentralized platform need to do? Well, it needs to internally, we center all of this on a software platform which we are developing, which is called the Mobility Blockchain Platform. So, but independently of which name we give it, this is the transaction platform. And a transaction platform in a decentralized environment, what is its purpose? Its purpose is to orchestrate the identification, the verification of credentials, the collecting of signatures, so the identity triangle needed to basically conduct a valid contract, then to make a valid contract by at least 2 signatures, and each signature should always be traced back to a verified identity, then to conduct the actual smart contracting, so the business logic in there, and then last but not least, we're talking about blockchain distributed ledger, to do the revenue distribution and the distributed booking. So that part is what we summarize into the e-contracting. So that's essentially what any type of digital service will need. And if you got a large number of players, this transaction orchestration needs to be provided by the infrastructure. A friend of mine called it the protocol economy. So basically you need something. The internet now provides you with socket endpoints and protocols at the level of data formats, HTML, HTTP, the streaming formats, etc. What you need now is an internet of value, an internet of money, however you want to call it, where the protocol of the infrastructure provides what is quintessential to any transaction. And what's quintessential to any transaction is actually quite simple. It's the digital handshake between service provider and service consumer. The digital handshake needs to be, if you do it digitally, needs to be expressed with a digital signature. And the digital signature needs to be done in a way which it is cryptographically so secure, there can be no dispute about it, and everybody who is signing anything needs to be identified physically as well. So if I get a signature, a digital signature from a customer, that customer needs to have undergone a know your customer verification. If I get a signature from a company, that company needs to be able to digitally verify that it's indeed this and that company. So for instance, Bundesanzeiger or Kreditreform could provide that trust service. And if you're talking about a machine economy here, which partly this is, think car, think charging station, you also need your devices, even though they don't sign legal contracts, you need your device to be able to digitally sign data, and you know which device that data just came from. And if you got that, you pretty much have the baseline for a fully automated end-to-end service delivery where you don't need any centralized players. This can be done leveraging the protocols that distributed ledger, blockchain, and decentralized identities bring. And this is the design assumption which we would like to propose here. And as an outlook, which I will not go into much detail here, but this is after all Frankfurt, the money capital of Germany. So if you think about, you already have a platform where transactions are being conducted by blockchain, meaning smart contract. And if you know how tokens are realized, essentially tokens are connected to smart contracts, then such a platform on which assets are earning money and booking money lends itself extremely well to actual tokenization of assets or tokenization of revenue streams, the technical term being STO, security token offerings. So there's a very clear continuation between such a platform and eventually tokenizing the revenues or the assets that are being managed by such a platform. So, why has all of this not happened so far? Well, it simply was technically very, very difficult. Integrating two companies' technical infrastructure to the level that they can automatically verify the signatures, the contracts, up to the level that they can book it into their ledgers, is already from a company A to company B is an endeavor. It's an endeavor that takes months, not weeks, not days. And if you add third player, fourth player, fifth player, it actually gets more complicated. So you're not achieving economies of scale. It actually gets harder as you add players. Again, blockchain being a peer-to-peer approach to things, that goes away. The integration effort is extremely, extremely easy in integrating many players. You got 99 players on a distributed, decentralized network, and then you want the player number 100. All they do, roughly speaking, they download a node, they bring up the node connects to the fabric of the other 99 nodes, it synchronizes through built-in protocols. You're not providing any intelligence or integration effort for that, and boom, bam, your node number 100 has the same chain, has the same states, has the same information as the other 99 had, and that is pretty much 2/3 of your integration effort, the last 1/3 being you using point-to-point interfaces from your local transaction systems into your local blockchain node. And this so far was very difficult. The technology now brings with it that this integration barrier, which stood in the way of doing this in a profitable and cost-effective manner, gets basically reduced. As you do this, and as you are considering many players, what you need to focus on is, this is very different from the traditional software license game. In order to achieve acceptance of such a decentralized environment, you need to achieve, first of all, you need to be clearly seen as neutral. So you cannot be a competitor to any of your key players on the platform. And you must give people the assurance that there is no vendor lock-in, there is no entry barrier, and there's no exit barrier. And the only way to do this based on software is to make sure that the protocols, the languages that you use to communicate from one component to the other are open, democratized. You can still accept software components, black box component, being patented intellectual property whatsoever, but in the exchange formats, the rules and the exchange levels should always be open, because in this way, your ecosystem development, acquiring business partners on your ecosystem avoids the unnecessary barriers. Yes, but if I go with your type, don't I risk locking myself out from something else? Or once I go with you, how can I make sure that if I decide to leave you again, I don't lose all of my business? The only way you can address that is you need open standards, and that is the basis of any and all of such decentralized platforms, especially while we are still in a phase of building them up. So we are now in the beginning phase of such decentralized systems, so we need to be careful that the risk profile of joining such a profile is as low as possible. Taking that a little bit further, how would you now create this? So let's take here the example of urban mobility, which is something that we looked at quite deeply. So you got ride-hailing operators, you got car sharing. By the way, you also got your financing in there, you got your fleet operators in there. And all of them are basically somehow involved in such an ecosystem where vehicles and fleets are put to use, they are being financed, they are being rented out, they are being deployed. And if you now assume, like basically we started off, that you want to scale just like software platforms scale, but you want to avoid this winner-take-all dynamics which tends to result in rent-extracting monopolies, how do you structure it? And roughly speaking, it works along a word which in the German-speaking part of the world is very well known. It is more or less, the devil is in the detail, should be thought of as genossenschaftlich. So the English word would be cooperative, but it loses a little bit in the translation. And how does that essentially work? It works very simply in this following way. I have a platform which we would like to position as a very scalable platform, which should achieve critical mass. So for the customers, they get all they want there with one click, so the full convenience of a platform. So that's the purpose. On the other hand, we have a lot of individual players who are competitors to each other that should now be incentivized to participate in this platform. So the basic mechanism is that those who provide services over that platform should also be the one that govern the platform, that rule the platform. So a good example, I come from Stuttgart, where every village in the Remstal, we have a lot of wine farmers, and every village has a Kelterei, which is basically, the Kelterei is the grape factory. You bring the grapes, you pre-process them, so afterwards each one of the wine farmers can make his own specialized wine. Now, all of these wine farmers are clearly competitors to each other. However, and the Kelterei, however, is jointly operated, jointly owned, and it should also be profitable. And only by having because none of the individual wine farmers can afford this piece of infrastructure, so they all need it jointly. They are still competitors. Should still be profitable. So how do they make sure that this can be done? And at the same time, the Kelterei doesn't all of a sudden become a gatekeeper. And at some point in time, when it actually has achieved so much power, then it says, oh, you know what? The prices just went up by 10%. And you know what? Next year, the price is going to go up another 10%. You got another Kelterei to go to? No? Well, that's then accepted, right? And the only way you cannot have this situation is if the customers of such a platform, who are the B2C service operators, own and control jointly this platform, which brings it down to the governance, rules, etc. So this is, as you design such decentralized platforms, one of the main focus points, once you clarify the technology, which coming from a software side of things, the technology, for me, obviously is the easy part. So, but then how do you operate it on the business level, and how do you make sure, again, the incentives and the mechanisms are designed so that this stays sustainable in a way, yes, it produces the desired effects, but at the same time it doesn't disturb the balance of power. And we strongly believe that decentralized platforms with an appropriate type of governance can fill that role. So, to sum it up more or less, what you need in this is you need open democratized protocols. The software should be jointly operated, jointly owned, whether you go full-blown open source or whether you go jointly owned source code is a matter of debate. But then the overall platform itself in its governance should be open, democratized, and decentralized in the way it should be. There should be very clear rules who may join and who may not join, and this should be based on the rules of the platform rather than one player having the power to decide, yes, I would like you on the platform versus no, I would not like you on the platform. So this is pretty much, as long as you go by these rules, you have a good chance to design this. And now with the convergence of the necessary technologies, smart devices, IoT on the one side, decentralized identities on the other side, and distributed ledger in the middle to keep track of the money and the transactions, you can actually execute this in a cost-efficient and scalable manner. So this is the proposition, the design considerations that I would like to present here in terms of how do you structure one type of ecosystem in the automotive sector where your assumption is it will be decentralized, it will be many players, and it will not be in the control of any single player. Thank you.